Welcome to Coach's Corner, everybody. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Coach Tripp. Got a special guest today, Steve Nissim, Chief Storyteller for Quinn Studer Families. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining the show.
Coach Tripp, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my gosh. Steve's an award-winning TV broadcaster for over 3 decades. So we're going to talk a lot about that. But, Steve, you're from Queens in New York. I want to start at the beginning. Talk about your mom and dad and any siblings and growing up.
Only child. Yeah, grew up in Queens, New York. Very different lifestyle than down here. Lived in a big apartment building on the 8th floor of a 17-story building. Didn't know any different. Thought that was just what life was like. But loved sports from the very beginning. My dad was not into sports, which would be surprising. My mom was a little bit. She actually used to go to the Brooklyn Dodgers games. Her dad, my grandfather, was into sports, and he got me kind of into it. And she used to be like a big Brooklyn Dodgers fan, like back in the day.
Wow.
And so I started watching, and in my early loves, I for whatever reason, I love the teams that were not very good. Like the Mets were terrible. I mean, they were in Queens, obviously, and all the teams I followed were bad. Like people like the Knicks. I didn't like the Knicks, like the Nets. They were like the New Jersey Nets back then.
Yeah.
And like the New York Rangers back then. In hockey, the Islanders were winning the cup every year. So it kind of got me grounded to be a lovable loser type fan. But that was great. But yeah, so we played basketball. We played all kind of sports, pickup games galore, and that was a big part of my childhood. And sports was always a big thing. It was always a focal point for me. I kind of just dove into it early.
Wow. So your grandfather and your mom were influenced early on baseball, love of it anyway. You went to Forest Hills High School. What sports did you play there?
Yeah, well, you know what? The funny thing about it is, they had sports teams there, but I didn't actually play for any of the sports teams. We had people that did, but it wasn't as big of a deal like down here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just played pickup sports all the time. I had some friends of mine. I mean, I was an okay player, but I had some friends of mine, great baseball players. They didn't even play on our high school baseball team. They went on to play like huge men's league. One of my friends, his son plays in the NHL now, so he has that kind of talent in his body, but didn't play. So we played stickball, we played hockey, we played basketball, we played football, everything pickup. That was more like our lifestyle. So there certainly was some sports there, but we did varsity wise. We didn't do it. It just wasn't a big deal to us, and our parents didn't know or care about it.
So one of your friends growing up, his son's in the NHL now?
Yeah. My friend Frank Pinto, his son Shane Pinto plays for the Ottawa Senators. And it's a pretty phenomenal story. That kid from Long Island, to go do that. So actually, I was just up in New York and got to see him and spend a little time. So that was really cool. But our lives were centered around sports a lot, just competing against each other and against other kids. It was fun times.
Yeah, hockey's a great sport. I played for 8 years, went up to Canada and played some time, got our ass whooped up in Canada a few times. But yeah, my brother ended up playing college hockey at RIT. So
wow.
That's pretty interesting. Even our neighbor, you talk about pickup games. My neighbor's at an ice rink right down the street in our neighborhood.
Well, we used to play foot hockey. We didn't play because we played in the parks, and we would play foot hockey, not on ice, obviously. But we loved it. We played in gym class, and it was part of our gym class also. They had like after school tournaments of foot hockey.
Wow.
And it was just so much fun. And really like right now, hockey, I like watching hockey more than any other sport. And the reason is because it's so fast paced, very physical, and there's not a lot of scoring, but there's a lot of scoring chances. Any minute now, in any second, you could have a goal that's the difference, and you can't look away for any time period. The athletic ability of those guys is incredible.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. Hockey's my favorite too, especially around playoff time. And man, it's so exciting. You're right. If you miss it, like if I go hockey game, it'll seem like I missed the only goals that's happening. But that's interesting. How did you get to FSU? You're an FSU grad.
Yeah, I just wanted to go away from home for college. I just wanted to experience something else. So I applied a lot of different places, got in different places. I got into Florida State. Somebody had told me, hey, try Florida State. So I applied. Then I got in and I just went down to visit it. Didn't know anybody there, but it's got a good vibe. And I said, well, let me go take a leap of faith and go become a Seminole. And It was fantastic. I loved it. I remember, like when I first went down there, I was a little homesick, trying to get used to it for the first semester. And then after that, I never wanted to go home, because it's a great school, it's a party school, and you can learn a lot there as well. So it was fantastic. And it just brought me to a new world.
Oh my gosh, that brings back memories of me too. When I went to Alabama, I didn't know a single soul. I didn't even know where it was on the map, to be honest with you. And I got homesick, but yeah, I never moved back after that. I never went home again to live.
Yeah, I got there in 1986, and the year Florida State started their great run was 87. The next year was when they started the run of 14 in a row, top five. So I obviously didn't play, but I'm going to take credit just for my aura being there.
Bobby Bowden, did you get ever a chance? I got a chance to interview him on my radio show years back, and he was such a joy. He came to Pensacola for a book signing, the Wisdom of Faith, which is a great book. Have you read that? Have you got a chance to interview Bobby Bowden?
I did get to interview him many times when I was going to school there. I was in some of the student broadcast programs, and I got to interview him then. And then, of course, many times after that, working for Channel 3, I got to interview him many times there as well. Unbelievable guy. The thing about him is he always treated you like you were his best buddy, no matter what, whether he knew you or he remembered you, he didn't remember you. You just had a comfortable feeling with him. He was going to be interesting. That's as a broadcaster, I always like people that were going to, you don't have to give away your whole thing, but you got to say something. And he was always entertaining, funny. He would be honest. You knew he was telling you the truth, and he was just so warm, and he just treated everybody like you were his buddy. And that always stood out to me. That was from when I was a student still interviewing then till a veteran sportscaster many years later. Always got the same vibe, same feeling from him, because that's the kind of genuine person that he was.
That's interesting you say that. He's always present. He was very present with you. He looked you in the eye. He would, Bill Walton was the same way. He was interested in your story, whether it was any good or not. And that's a character that's kind of far and few between nowadays.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. So you talked about your mentors. Everybody, you've heard so many stories. 30 years in broadcasting, Steve. You've seen so many success stories. What do you think is like the one common characteristic that these successful athletes have in common?
Perseverance, no question. I mean, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to have failures. Speaking of Bobby, his first year at Florida State was not great. And, and I think he had time, when he was in West Virginia, they were burning it, or had him in effigy there, so everybody has their failures and things they have to overcome. So to me, it's the resilience that is the difference, is that you lose and you learn something. You lose and you come back stronger and more determined. And I think you see, all the great ones that I've been able to follow personally or just from afar. That's the trait that's there. They're going to work hard, but it's the resilient part that's the difference maker.
Oh man, I agree 100%, Steve. I was just watching Kirby Smart, and he talked about, his current quarterback could have left when Stetson Bennett was around, and resilience is a core value for Georgia, University of Georgia. And I believe perseverance, I didn't have much. I mean, look at me. I didn't have looks, talent. I don't know. I was a weak, weird, white, wild, Yankee walk-on from New York. So I didn't have much, but one thing is perseverance. You just never stop, never quit, keep it up. I think that was pretty insightful on your part. All right. I was watching your show in studio, especially the Pensacola Golf Legacy show. Wow. What a great show, Steve. A. Downing Gray, Adrian Stills, and Marty Stanovich. Yeah. And the UWF golf coaches. But let's talk a little golf. Let's talk A. Downing Gray. I don't think he gets enough credit. Did he really win 7 tournaments in a row at FSU?
That's what they said. That's what I read. Wow. He didn't deny it. I was, I
and he won't lie.
And when he was at FSU, he won 7 tournaments in a row at some point, which is insane. He's a fantastic story because he was an unbelievable amateur, obviously unbelievable in college. He ended up going to the U.S. Amateur. He was runner-up at the U.S. Amateur 3 times, which is incredible. But he never turned pro. Like he just had that personal decision. He had a family. He decided, I don't want to go down the road. Even for the greatest golfers in the world, it's a struggle to try to get somewhere.
Right.
And he didn't want to go down the road. He played in 7 Masters still as an amateur, and he could hang with anybody, as he showed. So he was a great example in a lot of ways. A guy that was super determined and put up great results, but then also just, hey, his personal decision was, even though I could do that, I don't think it's the best for my life and my family, and I'm just going to remain an amateur and do that on the side. And that's a heck of a side gig there to be playing in the Masters and the U.S. Amateur and all that. So, and he played.
You buffered out for a minute, but I think you said 19 U.S. amateurs, 7 Masters he played in. And you're right. They weren't making, the thing you have to think about, Steve, is it was the same thing I thought about when we get into coaching when I got done playing pro football. They were working and gone, and I had little kids just like he did. And I didn't want to, I could have gone back to Alabama and coach, but I'd be working 80 hours a week for $24,000 a year. So their tournaments, they weren't even making that in the golf tournaments back then. So he made a decision for his family. I don't regret it. I don't regret not getting into coaching, even though they're, millionaires now and I'm poor. But
yeah. Hey,
but at least what a great story. Adrian Stills, man, him and he's such an unbelievable pioneer.
He was one of the last African Americans ever to qualify through Q School to make the PGA Tour.
Right.
He didn't end up sticking, but hey, he made it to the PGA Tour.
Right.
He's a fascinating story. He's been a tremendous coach for so many years. The thing I loved about him was he got a college scholarship offer in the 7th grade. Because his brother was older than him and he was getting recruited by South Carolina State, but he went and played with his brother when the coach came to see him, and the coach said, okay, once you're of age, you got an offer right now. And he ended up going there as well. So he's a great story. Joe Durant is an unbelievable story. He's a guy who played at Escambia, was not that, he was good, but I think he wasn't anything special. Went to Huntington, what is now Huntington, and just became an NAIA All-American and then took off from there. He's a guy that started believing in himself. And, he first got out on the tour and he had quit at some point and went to sell insurance. And, I think good thing he was not a good insurance salesman because that didn't work. And his wife kind of kicked his butt a little bit. You need to get back out there and believe in yourself. He did. And he's been playing for over 30 years on the highest level of the PGA Tour. He's played on the PGA Tour, the Champions Tour, for like 30 years. He has 10 wins over the 3 different tours. Just incredible. And, the reason I did that show on WSRE was because the legacy is unbelievable. Because you talk about those guys, then you got all the Milton guys. You've got, obviously Bubba Watson, Boo Weekley, and Heath Slocum, and those guys are all still playing right now. But the thing that maybe really tells you the tale of how amazing it is, it was 2000 and I think 2008. I might be wrong on the year, right around there, where all 3 Milt guys at the Masters made the cut. So here you have the top. It was like the top 44 players in the world made the cut at the Masters. 3 of them were from Milton High School.
Yeah, that's never happened before. It'll never. I was watching the show. Joe said he's never seen it before. That will never happen again. Not in a public school. Marty pointed out it might be in a private school, but that's phenomenal. And we got to give thanks to who Marty gave thanks to. Hiram Cook, and and Murray Rutledge and those guys. Hiram Cook especially. That was one thing that was interesting to me. Those guys started, I think it's the youth league, and all of them had a big influence. This is another thing I wanted to talk about, Steve. All of them had huge influence, myself included. Our dad was a huge influence on them. Marty's dad, Adrian, bought his first set of clubs in 1971 from Stanovich. Talk about that, the youth and the and why this area grew those kind of golf elite guys.
Well, I think it just builds on everything builds on itself. And it's not just golf. It's just in all the sports here. We always talk about how amazing the legacy is of athletes that have come out of here way beyond our population size. And it's because of the ones that set the standard, and they keep Pensacola in their hearts, and they've given a great example, and they keep giving back, and they just build on each other. You go back to your Derek Brooks, your Emmett Smiths, your Don Sutton's, all these kind of guys, and they all saw the ones before them, and those guys give back. I think, obviously that happens other places also, but I think it's just more so here. People care here, and it just keeps building. And there's, you get the belief, oh, you can do it out of Pensacola because so many have before. So, in golf, it's the same thing. They have, now the organization that Marty runs, that Adrian used to run, First Tee of Gulf Coast, used to be the Greater Pensacola. I'm going to mess up the name of it, so I won't go there. But it's a fantastic legacy. We have great coaches in this area. We have families that care about it, and then the legacy of great athletes in all these sports just builds on each other, and they support and they care about the ones that come after them, and that shows. That's why you've seen all this success throughout the years.
Yeah, the golfers sure have, man. They have all given back to the First Tee program and helped it grow. And we got another 2 girls, friends actually, going out to Pebble Beach this year to represent the First Tee program again, which seems like we have one almost every year, but there's only 80 or 90 boys and girls combined that get to go out and do that event. And that's a life-changing event that they'll never have an opportunity, a lot of those kids.
Incredible. Yeah. When I was at Channel 3, I covered a number of them that went out there. We definitely had more than our share. And it's not just about you have to be a really good golfer, but it's not usually not the best golfer, the one that makes it. It's the most well-rounded person. And that's kind of what the First Tee is all about, is being, it's more than just golf. It's about teaching, life skills as well. And you talked about these guys giving back, like the Diva Derby actually is going on as we speak. It's going on this week. And everybody plays for free in that because of Bubba Watson. Bubba Watson pays. This is going for a number of years now. I don't know how many years it's been, but it's probably been maybe 10 years or so that the Diva Derby is free to everybody because Bubba pays for it. And then all the other guys we mentioned, they all have given back. They've all helped Marty to grow First Tee. Joe Durant has done so much. Jerry Pate, we didn't even mention him, who was an Alabama guy who was one of the elite golfers in the world in the 70s. Some injuries, kept him from ending up being like a Nicklaus type guy, but he was on that kind of train. He was at that level. He's given back a lot. I know Boo has as well. Joe does a tremendous amount. All these guys give back to help grow the game in this area.
Wow. Pensacola is soon becoming, I call it, since I'm an old DB coach, I think I call it DB City now. Emerson Jr. and Devin Witherspoon, of course, Jeremy Reeves, my player at Catholic, and maybe Lindarian Clarity in a few years. But yeah, that's we're starting to get the NFL guys back, and that goes all back to I think it all goes back to the interest of this community in caring in the youth programs, and the coaches from youth all the way up through high school have been elite since the 70s, since the mid 70s.
The NFL legacy is another thing that's just off the charts. I used to I don't keep track of it as much as I did before, but I used to keep track of how many guys we had. And at one point, I think we were at 12 or 13 from the 2-county area.
I remember
the NFL. That's like way off the charts in terms of ratio of the population. It's just unbelievable the amount of guys we have. And right now we're kind of actually heading back up again with the guys you mentioned. And there's other guys, still up there as well. It's just astounding how this area continues to churn out NFL players. We know it's really good, but in football, but does not nearly get the publicity of South Florida or other areas or California or Texas or whatever. But Pensacola is churned out an off the charts amount, and different type of players. We got kickers, we got everything you could think of, offensive linemen, defensive linemen. The DBs are going crazy now. It's been truly remarkable to watch what's happened there.
The kickers, I'm glad you mentioned that. 2 or 3 three kickers actually with the punter from Milton.
Corliss Waitman, Corliss Waitman's a great story himself. And of course, Graham Gano still going strong. I remember covering him at Tate High School.
Lawrence Tynes kicked for 10, 12 years.
Lawrence Tynes was unbelievable. He won a couple of Super Bowls with the Giants. It's just a phenomenal.
Steve, I think I did some research on it when I was doing radio. When you're talking about that 12 to 14 NFL current guys we had in the league at one time, I did a piece on American Samoan. They had at the time They had hundreds of guys in college Division I and dozens of guys in the NFL. So, but after the American Samoan per capita NFL guys, Pensacola is number 2 in the country.
Yeah, we're right there, right behind American Samoa.
Which we have some, wrestlers talk about wrestling. I mean, my God.
Oh yeah, I covered Joe Anawahe, when he played at Georgia Tech, and then all of a sudden he becomes a wrestler. I remember going to watch him when he came here. Roman Reigns now, for those that don't know, but Escambia High School, and he was a really great football player, and I think he played in some other he has a taste of pro football, but then his path was wrestling, and he's become a superstar in that. And we have obviously the Usos, and there's a whole bunch that have come out in the wrestling world.
And I got to give a shout out to Mark Merrow. There's Mark Merrow, Johnny B. Bad, Marvelous Mark. What a great champion he was. What a great wrestler he was. And he's the number 1 school presenter in the world. So you should follow him on Facebook. The guy's full of wisdom. I thought I'd give Mark a shout out. Let's talk a little bit about your buddy, Dan Shugart, just retiring. How many years did you spend with Dan? And are you guys still doing I heard he's still going to do Friday night prep football.
He's going to do prep football final still. He just retired after 43 years.
Wow.
I had the joy of spending 21 of those years, working alongside him. The guy's just a dynamo. Nobody could do sportscasting like Dan Shugart could, because he knew everything that was going on. He had 8 million things going on always, and he just dedicated himself to knowing everything, covering everything, leaving no stone unturned. He's a legend in terms of, you don't see behind the scenes in terms of like archiving. He is like, he will go to the ends of the earth to archive all these plays from all the games. Like, you only show a certain amount on the air, and then he would create these vast files of archive footage from games that we did not air, just in case that we needed it someday.
Wow.
So that's maybe one of the most remarkable things about Dan that people don't know. So, 3 years after a certain game, if somebody from the Fayetteville Fire Ants got traded to the Ice Flyers, he would go back and find video of him from a time when the Fire Ants were here playing a game. The amount of effort he put in was incredible. And hey, at the time you're like, is it worth all that effort on the small chance you might use it? But it was because that made it a little bit better for the viewer, right? If you had video of this guy from whatever sport, so many years later or whenever it happened. So that just shows you the level of dedication that he had. And, it was phenomenal to watch him all those years, the passion he had for it, how much he cared about doing it justice, to the highest level. And that showed. That's why he became the icon that he is. And it's great to see how he got celebrated. At the end, he deserved as much as you could possibly do. And so many people reached out. They did, the whole show on him. They could have done the whole week on him, really. And they did do a lot of stuff during the week. But and he's gotten celebrations at the Wahoos, did a celebration for him. And there's more stuff coming up. But the guy is a legend for a reason. I was fortunate enough to see it up close.
Wow, man! I think of the archived clips of old Josh Sitton or Travis or Fryman or Jay Bell or all those guys. I bet he's got clips of all those guys.
Everybody, that obviously way back in the day, Derek Brooks and Roy Jones. He had a whole box of Roy Jones, stuff. And that's history right there. Nobody else has that. That's not anywhere else. So, we've talked about it a little bit. I still think there should be a day where there should be a Pensacola Sports Hall of Fame with Dan Shugart running the place and curating all that video and the knowledge he has. And maybe if we're lucky, we'll see it someday.
Oh, that's a great idea, Steve. That's a brilliant idea. Market it at, you can do it a lot like they did up in Tuscaloosa, the Coach Bryant Museum, where you can watch the old films and videos and all the archived memorabilia that is there is just priceless. Why is it in somebody's attic? It should be out there shown. And that's a great idea. And have him the director of the museum, the Pensacola Sports Museum. Brilliant idea.
We got one in Mississippi too, because I used to work before I came to Pensacola. I worked in Mississippi, and while I was there, they opened a Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame in Jackson. I'm sure I haven't been there in a long time, but I'm sure it's still there. But it was like that. It was like, a lot of interactive stuff and video, and the Pensacola obviously is ripe for that with what we have coming out of here.
All right. I'm gonna hold it, Dan. See if I can get him on the golf. see if we can get something going on the golf course with him. In June, I saw on Facebook you attended or facilitated a Speaks to Inspire, a training session on mental health. That was talk a little bit about what you're doing now and some of the projects that you're working on like that.
Well, I work for Student Community Institute, which is a nonprofit that is designed to make the community a better place to live. And, we have, building brains, building jobs. We have, programs for early brain development that teach the parents about the pivotal importance of early brain development. It's a game changer for kindergarten readiness and things like that, which has been historically low in Escambia County. We have these programs for entrepreneurs to help them succeed, because any community that's thriving supports their entrepreneurs and small businesses, which is booming in Pensacola now. And, a lot of the programs we have help to support that. We have other stuff for helping business leaders and owners to grow their skills, to grow jobs in the area. So I get to do stories on all those things, which is, fantastic. I love doing that. And those things are difference makers in our community. But I get to be involved in other things. And the Speaks to Inspire is run by Abraham Scully, just a tremendous young man who is part of the SCI world here, because he's one of our mentees in our entrepreneur program, but he also has become a speaker at EntreCon, which is our big business and leadership conference every November. It's year 10 coming up this year. But I did a show. I've been doing these shows for WSRE in studio shows, and I did the golf one you mentioned. Another one I did was on student mental health, because that's a huge problem right now. The numbers of middle school, high school, college kids that have significant mental health issues is skyrocketing. It's way up there, and there's just a need to address it. There's a need to diminish the stigma about getting help, and that's what Abraham does. And my relationship with him was the impetus for starting that show. But we had a lot of other people on there talking about what kids face these days. It's a whole different level with social media, the pressures of that, the pressures of having to always be on with that and always be on guard because of that. And then also not having the same kind of relationships. Those are more not in-depth type relationships that you have because of just the nature of the world and social media. And sometimes you don't have those connections that with somebody that helps you to fight through something. So we talked about all that on that show. So I encourage people to go watch that. And Abraham, he's actually got something coming up later in July, like a mental health summit. So he's a guy to keep an eye on in this community. He's doing some great work, and I was really happy to do that show about mental health and things he's doing.
That's why I think Mark Merrow's an angel on earth, man. That old high school buddy of mine, teammate of mine, he goes around the world and he still travels. He's got plenty of money. He doesn't need to do that. He goes around and saves thousands of kids' lives from suicide and drugs and, cutting themselves and bullying. And his presentation is just so transformational that he's been to hundreds and hundreds of funerals, Steve, but he's saved thousands and thousands of kids as well. And that's tough work. Man, that's God's work, isn't it?
Man, that's incredible. But we need people like that in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, who's the most fun person or player, coach, anybody that you can, maybe a couple guys? I can think of one local high school coach here that was just fun to interview.
Oh my God! There was so many that were fun. Mike Bennett always comes to mind. Is that who you were thinking of?
He talks so fast, like
he's a mile a minute, But he's another guy that's so passionate about what he's doing. And we used to make fun of him sometimes with some of his interviews because he would just get so manic about it. But we We joke because we love, right? Because
we love him.
we love
Yeah,
him
we
like
love
turn it
Coach
around
Bennett,
because
man.
he's great for this area and great for high school football. So
Yeah.
he's one that was always fun. I'll never forget covering them winning the state championship in 2009. What an incredible run they had, and with that defense, which was off the charts, Demarius Randall and company and those guys.
Yeah, Alexander Black and those guys.
There's so many colorful characters, to come out of here that are always fun. Talk about golf. Boo Weekley was always guy that was fun, to talk to, because he was just a different breed of golfer, and he was not afraid to be that way.
Right.
So I mean, they're oh man, there's so many great examples of coaches and athletes, that have come out of here that have just a joy to be around.
Who is the toughest? Who is like a real challenge? And usually it's high school kids, right? They give you one word answers. Or something.
Yeah. Well, no, it's usually the ones that like the biggest ones that want to talk like the most. Get me, and then when you get them, then they kind of clam up. Those are the ones that sometimes you want to really avoid those, because if they're too eager to do it, there might be some issues there. So you usually want to find the ones that are well spoken but not over the top in terms of wanting to be on there. There are tough ones, and it's tough after a loss. It's tough to be able to do those interviews. You have to really have a good sense of understanding someone is hurting and giving them some space, but then you have to, most times those guys will, if they're going to be there in the good times, they need to be there in the bad times.
Right.
And they will give you an answer. You just got to give them some space. You got to be respectful in how you approach them and how you ask it. But as long as you come that way, most guys will respect you. I'll tell you, one of the toughest ones I ever did. What was the guy's name? Oh, Kyle Turley. Remember Kyle Turley, the guy from the Saints?
Right.
He had a huge temper, and he was the guy that ripped the helmet off the guy, the Jets player.
Right.
And he came to Pensacola to do something. It was at Seville, and I interviewed him and I asked him about that, and he answered it, but I didn't realize he was mad at the time. But apparently he was mad, because the second the interview was over, he just walked off. And my camera guy said, you didn't realize? Because he said, I thought he was going to hit you or something. But I didn't realize that. I thought it was a valid question. That's what everybody, when you see Kyle Turley in those days, that's what people cared about. So if you don't ask somebody something like the elephant in the room, then you're not doing your job as a reporter. So you have to ask the tough questions. But if you've researched it, if you ask it in a proper way, you should be able to ask it.
Yeah, so that was probably the closest you got punched in.
Yeah, pretty much.
Nose for.
It was Tom Kite one time also. Remember Tom Kite, the golfer?
I
used to love the Champions Tour. They came here every year to play at the Moors.
Yeah,
and
I went.
Some cool guys. And I remember Tom Kite. I get mad at me because I asked him about. Because first of all, I don't think he wanted to do the interview. Then he agreed to it, and I asked him some question comparing like Phil Mickelson to him, and he was upset that I asked him about somebody else other than him. I think so. Sometimes you get those moments as a reporter. That's part of the job, because you're asking questions. It's not always what people want to hear, but as long as you're fair, then that's all you can do.
Hey, you got to face the music whether you win or lose.
Absolutely.
Some coaches are better losers and better winners than others. And that's what I try to do on this show. I studied Coach O'Leary and all the great Vince Lombardi. I studied all the great ones. Coach Bryant was a master, and he actually learned how to lose graciously. He didn't, and you talk about perseverance with these coaches. A friend of mine called me up today, Brad Bowes, and said, "Hey, I got a question for you. This guy went so-and-so, 1-10, 4-4, 8-3. Should you fire him?" You're talking about perseverance. And, that's that says a lot in coaching, too, because you can't give up, because you don't win. A lot of these coaches don't win for years and years and years. And, at the end is when you have to face the music, whether you're a winner or loser. So I always liked how Coach Bryant faced the media and talked to the media. Yeah. He was kind of witty anyway, but he was never rude or crass or anything to the media, even when it got ugly for him.
But they talk about, Coach Saban. He always had an adversarial relationship with the media, which the guy's a freak. He's a genius. And I've gotten to meet him a little bit when it was a one-on-one interview, and he's super nice. Yeah. But in that setting, in the press conference setting, it's just adversarial. And there was one time where he called me out, and I'll take that as a
did he? Oh, did he really?
Yeah. It was it was Trent's freshman year, Trent Richardson, and it was the SEC championship game. And it was a press conference setting, and obviously we're from Pensacola, so I'm going to ask about Trent. And I asked something. He had a great freshman year, and I remember asking something. How did Trent perform? Compared to what your expectations were of him coming in? And he was like, "You must not cover us because we don't set expectations on people." And kind of went off on me like that, and you start shrinking into like a small little child down there getting reprimanded by Nick Saban. Hey,
Coach Bryant, he was a master though with the media. He was just witty with him. He would never let him get to you. He would joke with them.
That's how Bobby was. That's how Bobby Bowden was.
That's how Bobby Bowden, right? Well, Bobby Bowden, Bobby Bowden actually talked about, because I asked him about, because he could have been in that gap, right, after Coach Bryant to Saban. He could Coach Bowden could have been very well in that gap. He talks about it in his book, and I asked him about it on the radio. But yeah, they're very much alike. There's very, and I like that. I like that about them. I didn't like how Coach Saban treated the media. So that's just personal preference. But yeah, he's the second grade. Coach Saban's the second greatest coach that ever coached at Alabama and in the world.
Yeah,
in college.
Well, there you go. That was the top two in the world. Yeah. I'm going to give you another one now that I think about it more is Roy Jones, because Roy Jones Jr., because he was so off the charts loyal to Pensacola. We talked about like a lot of the athletes doing that. He personifies that, because whenever we would go cover him at different fights, we covered him in Las Vegas, we covered him, all over the country, a lot of different places. And he would always do Pensacola first. He would always do our interview afterward first before going to ESPN and the big press conference where everybody's there. He would always make a point to come talk to Pensacola first, no matter what. And then I'm going to give you a story that encompasses this. And I did this. We did a show at WSRE actually that had him and Justin Gatlin on it, and I told this story there. We went to Vegas to cover him when he won the heavyweight championship in 2003 over John Ruiz, which is his story. He was the first former middleweight champ to become the heavyweight champ in over 100 years.
4 times, yeah.
But when we're out there, Marcus Morris was our chief videographer at Channel 3. He was with me there, and he got sick the night before. He ended up having appendicitis. He had his appendix out. It was a pretty serious situation. Thankfully, he ended up being okay. But anyway, the night before, he had appendicitis. So I have no camera guy at the fight. And also, I was feeling sick too. Actually, I had the flu, it turns out, and I was like going downhill, but I was just trying to push through. So I go there, and I got no camera person. And after the fight, I'm trying to find somebody that can shoot the interview for me, because I always do a one-on-one with them, and we send that back. But I didn't have anybody. So I'm looking, and I find this other station that had the same format we did. So I went up to them, and I said, this is after the fight, big press conference room, and they're getting ready for Roy to come in. I go, hey, look, if I get Roy to do a one-on-one, will you guys shoot it? And then you guys can use it also. And they're like looking at me, you're going to get Roy to do a one-on-one where there's hundreds of people in this room. Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll do it. So Roy does the press conference, it ends. And then I find his Bill, which is his best buddy, right-hand man guy. And Bill's kind of coming out, and Roy's like, through all these people. And I said, Bill, I told him what happened. Hey, Marcus is sick. I don't, these guys are going to shoot this if you get Roy over here. And he looks up, he sees Roy across the room, all the people around. He goes, hey, Roy, Pensacola. Boom, came right over, right through everybody, did the one-on-one interview.
Oh my gosh.
Because that was his top priority. His top priority was Pensacola in his hometown always, no matter what situation. So those guys were like, okay, I guess you were right. So they got to use it, and I got to send that back.
Cool.
It was possible because of Roy's love for Pensacola, which encompasses a lot of these athletes that come out here. I mean, that story to me is personifies Roy and Pensacola athletes.
Oh, I'm glad I'm glad we would have been remiss if you didn't tell that story. I'm glad you told that story. Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to have Roy on my show someday, maybe one day. Wow. That's a lot, man. Steve, it was great seeing you again, man. Thanks for the stories. Thanks for the updates. Everything going on. What's next for you guys? What's on your book in the future here?
Well, I mean, we're obviously for Studio Community Institute, we're working on a lot of things. EntreCons are big. business and leadership conference coming up in November. This is year 10. Quinn's going to speak again this year. We've got speakers coming from across the country with different tips and techniques and best practices and things to learn and grow as a business person and as a person. So we're kind of working towards that. That's November 13th and 14th. And then I'm also doing more shows for WSRE. I'm going to do one coming up on the fentanyl crisis. So, kind of not just sports, dabbling in other stuff as well.
Okay.
So always keeping busy one way or another. And it's, we love Pensacola and,
how old's your boy and your girl now?
Good. My son is 19. He's actually playing college golf right now at a junior college in Birmingham, Jefferson State.
Oh, good.
So he just had his freshman year last year, going back for his sophomore year. And my daughter is 16 and she's a rising junior at Catholic and doing her thing. And
awesome.
Sports-wise, she does swim and dive. I don't know if you've seen divers, but that is you got to be pretty bold to be a diver.
Yeah.
I give them a lot of credit. I mean, if you're doing it right, you're almost like crashing into the board every time. It's pretty phenomenal. So it's been fun to watch her, the other athletes do that stuff.
Well, she got the guts. Your boy got the fine motor skills. The fine.
Yeah, none of it from me, by the way. None of it from me.
You got it from Mama Bear.
Oh yeah, from my wife Amanda. All of it's from her.
Great, Steve. Thanks. It's great to see you. Thanks for doing this. Have a great week.
It was great talking with you.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Man, that was awesome. Stay tuned for these great sponsors. Without them, this show just would not be possible. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great sports night. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Arbitrium Consulting for all your fencing, landscaping, pressure washing, tree trimming needs. Call 850-483-0350 for your free estimates. Serving Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, Navarre, Fort Walton, Destin, Perdido, Gulf Shores, Foley, and the entire Gulf Coast. Arbitrium Consulting is owner-operated, fully licensed and insured. Call today, 850-483-0350, the official landscaper of Coach's Corner.
Badlands Roadside Bar, located in the heart of the entertainment district in downtown Pensacola, is your complete bar experience. Badlands Roadside Bar, daily happy hours, nightly drink specials, open at 11 a.m. every day with 10 big screens and all your favorite sporting events. It's all at Badlands Roadside Bar, downtown Pensacola.
Hey, Bama fans, this is Will Moore, president of the Pensacola Bama Club. You can find us at PensacolaBamaClub.com. We are your official alumni chapter in the Pensacola and surrounding areas. Membership is available to all alumni and all Bama fans, so come see us at one of our many events throughout the year. Our Bama football watch parties are the next best thing to being in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We even serve authentic stadium hot dogs. Membership, event, and contact information will be found on our website at PensacolaBamaClub.com. Roll Tide.
Barnes Heating and Air is a proud sponsor of Alabama football, serving the entire Pensacola community for over 50 years. Barnes Heating and Air is passionate about providing customers with world-class air conditioning and heating repairs, sales, and installation. Barnes Heating and Air is family-owned, insured, and committed to quality. For a free estimate, call 478-0141. Barnes Heating and Air is #1 in customer service with service calls 7 days a week. Call Barnes Heating and Air, 478-0141, and roll Tide.
Over 30 years, you have seen the orange Beck signs all over the Gulf Coast listing a property for sale or lease. Beck Partners is your trusted advisor in commercial real estate, property management, commercial and personal insurance. Senior Vice President David Valletto has been with Beck Partners since 1989. Take advantage of his wealth of knowledge by calling him today at 982-7352, 982-7352. Extensive experience in all aspects of leasing, sales, management, and site selection will make sure your expectations are exceeded.